What is going on, YouTube? It is Primitive here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my Terrasaur Nova list that I used to get top 32 at the first North America Battle Spirit Saga event in Las Vegas this past weekend. Now, this list could definitely be a lot better. I think I didn't have a full understanding of what this metagame was going to be like. I think I was trying to prep for everything instead of just dedicating to my own build. But the list did still perform pretty well. Was able to make that day 2 where I did get aggroed out in top 32, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and start getting on into the list. Alright, so for the bottom end, we are just going to have all Terrasaur or Emperor Beast spirits because we are playing the Gagano Rex package, and so I wanted to try and not dilute that package. So everything from the 4-cost lower is going to be Terrasaur or Emperor Beast. So starting off with the 4 OV Raptidon, and this card is just a 1-cost 1 reduction vanilla, so it's really good for just getting out reduction costs. If you have a Nexus out, you can play this for free, get it on board, now you have 2 reductions. It's also a 3-core 4K, which is very little investment for such a big number. 4K is very good with this deck. Being able to get through things like Burning Force or Volcanic Break without the Soul Core and stuff like that is very big, but Burning Force, playing around that was very big, so being a 4K was really good, but yeah, it's just our 1-cost Terrasaur. Then we're going to have 4 Grizzly, which is going to be our Confronter. I'm not playing Blade Dino Parasaur just because I like the Grizzly as the Confronter a little bit more, because if you go first, you'll have 4 cores, so you can put pay 3, put the 1 on, and then next turn you'll be able to set up the Confront, which then makes it so going into your opponent's first turn, they either have to swing to play around the Confront, or if they play something that's too small, like if they swing and you block, then normally they won't swing, and then you just have that Confront open, or something like that. So I just like being able to play this first over playing the Parasaur, just because it is a level 1 3K with the Blade Dino Parasaur. If you go second, you can play it out, but it's only a 2K, and so a lot of the times you aren't deleting a lot of things that are the 3K, so I just like the Horn Grizzly a little bit more, but I will say the Confront package wasn't as great. I think being able to just go a little bit more aggro would have been nice. One of the things about this build is I kind of wish I just went for the full aggro with the Nova package instead of just kind of focusing on this whole Emperor Beast Terrasaur. I think I would have had a little bit more success if I just went for full aggro instead of trying to play some more defensive cards, kind of like this Confront Grizzly. Then we have 3 Bearded Eagle, the absolute MVP, 3-cost 3 reduction vanilla, but it is a 2-core 5K, and this thing is an absolute unit. This thing just put in so much work the entire weekend. Being able to either block at 5K or just continually swing at 5Ks is very hard for your opponent to get through. 5K is even more annoying than the 4K, so really liked the Bearded Eagle. Then we got 2 Dino Man Tyrannoid, which level 3 if you have 2 or less spirits on the board, so this card is very good in the early game, but it's kind of mid in the mid to late game because you will be wanting to go 3 or 4 spirits wide, so having this be a level 1 and you having to put 3 cores on it to get to the 5K can be a little bit annoying, but this card was still very strong in the early game, so I did like it. And then to finish it off, we are playing the 1 Blazing Boar to finish off our Emperor Beast, and I really like this versus the slower matchups. Being able to grab a red spirit back from your trash really helps for multiple reasons. One, you can go ahead and grab back a few things. One, if you need a combo piece for your Nova combo, you can go ahead and grab that back. If you want to grab back something like a vanilla, like your Bearded Eagle or your Ovi, you can grab it back, more than likely play it for free or cheap and get that spirit back on the board. Or we are playing Volcanic Canyon, the Nexus, which is going to have you draw and trash at the beginning of your turn. So with Blazing Boar in the build, you have a little bit more freedom to maybe trash something that is dead in your hand now, but you need later. For example, like a Nova. If you have a Nova in hand, but you don't have Big Bang or Siegworm yet, well, you can pop it off of the Volcanic Canyon, and then later, if you get those cards and you still need the Nova, you can play the Blazing Boar to get the Nova back, and that way you're able to trash something that wasn't useful to you in your hand at the time, instead of getting rid of something useful just to have that combo later. So Blazing Boar had a lot of reasons why it was good. This is one of the more side deck cards, though, because I did play mostly aggro builds. I played a lot of Purple Curse aggro and the Red aggro, and so when you're playing against that, this card isn't that great because you don't really need to be recycling as much. You either need to go faster than them or play a little bit of a control build. So this was one of the more sided out cards, but I didn't want to put it in the side deck because I felt like it just wasn't a card that really worked that well. I didn't feel like it was bad in aggro matchups. It just wasn't that great. So I kept it as a main deck card and then just sided it out for those more aggressive matchups. But versus slower decks like the purple control, the white control, this card is absolutely insane because you can grab back things like Andromeda to pop Nexuses. You can grab back Nova. You can grab back whatever. Like, you just have so much time to really find out what you want to grab with this boar. So I really liked it in the slower matchups, but again, since I did get paired up against mostly aggro matchups, the blazing boar didn't come up that much, but I still don't think I would really cut it. Even if I were to go for it a little bit more aggressive build, I think the 1 blazing boar or even 2 blazing boar is fine, just because being able to grab the vanillas itself gives you a lot of aggression, but also since we are playing that Nova package instead of just the full aggro Terrasaur, there are some things in your trash that you're going to want to grab back. Now, getting on into our 6-cost spirits, we are going to be starting off with the 4 Seagworm, and I was originally playing 3 of this, 3 Seagworm, 3 Nova, 3 Big Bang, but I decided to go up to the 4th Seagworm just because in testing, I felt like I just was having times where I would either need to play one of these out early, and then it would get deleted, so then I wouldn't have it for the Nova, or it would just be I would have Big Bang Nova and I would never be able to find the Seagworm. I don't know why, but it was just this card specifically I was having the hardest time finding out of all the combo pieces, and I just wasn't having that hard of a time finding the other combo pieces, so just decided to go to 4. I don't really think there's that big of a problem with it. I think this is fine, especially with the Blazing Boar. You can play this a lot more aggro now by having the Blazing Boar, and by having 4 of these in deck, you can play these out early, which either means that you can develop it on board, so that way you don't have to play it later, and you can just play out the Nova, already have this developed. Or you can be aggressive with this, use it as a blocker, use it as confront, and then if it gets deleted, you can grab it back with the Blazing Boar and still have it. So, yeah, 3 Seagworm, or 4 Seagworm, but I was on 3. Next up, we're going to have 3 Andromeda. And this is actually the opposite of Seagworm, where I was playing 4 Andromeda and cut it down to 3. And the main reason was I was playing 4 Andromeda and 2 Burning Force to a total of 6 Nexus removal cards, or at least that's how I was viewing it. And when playing the Gagano Rex build, or adding the Gagano Rex, I needed to kind of not go as hard into the Star Dragon build, because then it just shuts off Gagano Rex. So I decided to cut this down to 3 and then go up to 3 Burning Forces. So I still had 6 Nexus removal cards, but Burning Force is also a great anti-aggro card. I played a ton of aggro at the event. I expected there to be a decent amount of aggro, so I really liked it because not only did it help with the Gagano Rex consistency, but also being able to have that higher consistency of being able to delete 2 3k or less BP spirits was very nice. And so yeah, I was just playing the 3 Andromeda. I honestly kind of would have preferred to play 4 Andromeda and 3 Burning Forces, just because being able to pop a Nexus while also being able to play a body that can then later confront was pretty big. So I think going forward I would still just play 4 of this and then still play the Burning Forces regardless. But to finish off our 6 cost, we are going to be playing 1 Dark Bishop Baculus, and this is mainly for the white control matchup. It was something that I expected to see more of. I didn't actually play into it. I only played into the white aggro build, but if I did play into the white control build, it was one of those things where if I didn't have this in the main deck, then I could either lose to the Elk or we would just tie, and I didn't want either of those to happen. If I played against it, I wanted to at least have a chance. The Dark Bishop Baculus will go over, does help with a combo that we will go over a little bit later, that essentially lets you break any white control board, no matter what it is. You will pretty much be able to beat it. And so I wanted to main deck the Baculus, and again, we will go over that combo here in a minute, but the Dark Bishop Baculus got sided out a lot too, because it's really only good versus white. It can have situations where it's good, where if you have a Nova out and your opponent starts to core up on their spirits, you can go ahead and play Baculus to put them all back to level 1, swing and pop with the Nova. But for the most part, this card was just there so that if I played versus white control, I would at least have an out to win game 1 and wouldn't have to lose or tie, because it is a decently rough matchup if you don't have the Baculus in there. So going forward, I'm not sure if I would keep it or not. It depends on how the metagame stabilizes. If white control stays really high up there, then you definitely need to play it. If it dies off, which I doubt it will, then you won't need it. So for now, I think you just stick onto it. As we will see, I have more of this in the side deck as well. So I still think the 1 in the main deck is fine, just for those times where you have to play white control in tournament and you want to win that game 1. Alright, now to get on into our big lads, we're going to be having 3 Nova and 2 Gagano Rex. 3 Nova over 4, just because you only need 1, maybe 2 a game. So the 3rd and the 4th are basically just bricks. When testing it at 4, I found it to be fairly same consistency as 3 as far as when I would see it, but I had a much higher spike of times where I would draw or mulligan, draw my opening hand or mulligan into multiple Novas in hand that were essentially dead because it was so early I couldn't do anything with them. So 3 Seagworm Novas was just good for me. That's what I liked it at. And then the 2 Gagano Rex, which, if I'm going to be completely honest, I kind of wish I didn't play in the event. I did add it back in a little bit before the deck list submission, maybe a couple days before, just because during testing, it was doing very well versus white builds as well as red builds, and I wanted to have a little bit more game versus them, especially the Nova mirror match, because I realized that if you get Gagano on the board as a 10k and buff up and core up all your other Emperor Beasts, it's really hard for Nova to clear board without having to go for multiple attacks, because they can either pop the Gagano Rex or they can pop other things. They can't do both because we're sitting at 10k, so I did like it in testing, but in the event, it's very bad versus aggro builds. It didn't come up very often. Even times when I had it in hand and was having the full 6 cost reductions, there wasn't a lot of times where I really felt like I needed to play it. And when I did play it, a lot of the times it sat there as a blocker instead of being an attacker, because that way I could just, when I was playing versus these aggro decks, I can just block stuff and then use my vanillas and my low end to go aggro and stuff like that. So I wasn't the biggest fan of the Gagano Rex throughout the event. This is still one of my favorite spirits and X-Rares, but I think in this specific style of build, where you're kind of focusing on an aggro build with that late game Nova recovery or kind of just end game scenario, I don't think the Gagano Rex fits as much. It was a good testing. I think you'll see a lot of lists that still play the Gagano Rex, but for me personally, it just didn't work. So I think going forward, I will be cutting it. Next up, we got the Nexuses, so starting off with the 3 Volcanic Canyon, and this card is very crucial for being able to cycle through your build. During your draw step, you draw an extra card and then discard a card, and so being able to get through to find things like your Nova pieces, just be able to find things like Big Bang, draw cards, your vanillas, Gagano Rex, whatever you need. This card was just super good. Being able to cycle through your deck way faster than your opponent is very helpful, especially towards the late game when you are looking for specific pieces. And I do like the plus 1k BP boost for 1 core. That is very big versus things like Enterprise, and being able to have suppression with the Enterprise, which is also why we're playing 2 Scorched Battlefield. I like Scorched Battlefield being kind of an opposite to Volcanic Canyon, where Volcanic Canyon you have a plus 1000 BP without having to put cores on it, and then you have draws on Scorched Battlefield where you have to put cores on it, but you don't have to discard a card. So it's they kind of supplement each other very well, in my opinion. I don't think I would cut either of these here. I am playing one rogue kind of Nexus here, which is going to be the Sacred Thundering Peaks, and we will go over this in depth here in a second, but in testing I was playing 4 Volcanic, 2 Scorched, and 3-3. I did like 3-3 the most personally. I think that if I wasn't playing the Sacred Thundering Peaks, I would go for the 3-3, but the main reason why we're playing the Sacred Thundering Peaks is not for the level 1 effect. The level 1 effect, I think I only activated once or twice in the main event, but for the level 2 effect, where when one of your spirits with Confront attacks first, so the very first thing on your turn attacks and it has Confront, it will be refreshed, and this is a very big deal because this is part of that combo that I was talking about that will be able to break any white board, and so I'm just going to go ahead and go over that here for a second. Alright, so here's the cards that you need for the combo. It's really just need the Seagworm, the Nova, and the Sacred Thundering Peaks. Now, what it is Sacred Thundering Peaks, when you swing with something with Confront, you get to refresh. Seagworm, for level 3, all your spirits with Awaken gain Confront, and then right here you have Seagworm Nova with Awaken. So basically what you can do is you can get 3 cores on here, 5 cores on here, and then 3 or 5 cores here, whatever you need. And then you can go ahead and swing the effect to pop 10k, Confront. This will refresh because Confront, and then you can swing 10k, or pop 10k, and then Confront. So that will basically break like any board, but the main reason why I wanted to add these 2 specifically was for the white control, where if you set up this combo, and then your opponent has the Enterprise, Elk, all this stuff, if you play this and put it down to 1, you remove the armor on the things like Elk or Elephant or things like that, so now you can pop it when you swing with your 10k effect, and everything's going to be very low BP, so that when you do Confront, if they have to Confront with their Enterprise, even if they play Suppression, if you have one of your Nexuses out that gives you a BP boost, you'll be fine. And so the combo of this just worked very well. I did have the swing 10k, Confront, unsuspend. It actually only happened versus non-white decks in the tournament because I only played the one white deck, but I did actually have this combo come up a couple times. But the whole purpose of adding these was for white and for this one combo, and you might think, well, this is a ton of cores. How are you ever going to have this many cores? Well, when you're playing versus white and you've been playing the same game for 40 minutes. You generally have enough cores to be able to do this and some. And so during practice, I found this combo to be very consistent versus things like the white control or just very slow decks in general, especially if you can lower the cost of these things with things like Big Bang or whatever. So, yeah. I found this combo to be work very well versus white. That's the main point of Sacred Thundering Peaks. Was it worth it? Not 100% sure. To be completely honest, it is something that was very strong, but it was something that didn't come up very often, and I think there is potentially other ways to go around the white matchup. Alright, so now let's get on into the magic. So going to have the 4 charge draw and the 3 Star Bless draw, starting off with those draw cards. I'm only playing 7 draw because in this metagame now, where it kind of shifted in the last week to be much more aggressive, the amount of Wind Summon Spirits, especially on the lower end of decks, dropped down to very little or none, and so there was just too many times where I was setting Star Bless draw on my burst, and it was just sitting there until I had to get rid of it to play Ice Shield, and I was getting no value from it, and I was essentially wasting the card. I was seeing that happen continually, and basically unless I was playing like Core Drain Purple, there was just a good chance that my opponent could just play around this very easily, and I wouldn't get any value off of it, so I decided to cut it down because the burst wasn't happening as much, and the charge draw just feels much more useful because it has that flash effect to give you plus 2k BP, so not only is it a draw card, but it's also a battle trick, and that did come up a lot of times, being able to get over your opponent's suppression or being able to block, just get that plus 2k, being able to maintain board control is very nice, and so I value charge draw over Star Bless draw a little bit more, but I will say Star Bless draw is the alt art here is my favorite card in the entire game, not even close. Next up, we got 3 Burning Force, and again, I already kind of mentioned this with the Andromeda. I wanted a total of at least 6 Nexus removal cards because being able to keep your opponent low on reduction crystals is very important, so they can't play as much, but also Burning Force is just very strong as an anti-aggro card, and aggro was very prevalent in this tournament, so being able to delete 2 3,000 or less was very big, especially because a lot of lists are playing 3-4 Burning Force, but they aren't playing other red decks, like Purple's playing it, White's playing it, so when you're playing a red deck, you get the value of this Burning Force, and actually full value of only playing it for 3 instead of 5, so no reason to not play Burning Force, but again, like I mentioned before, I would still probably play the 3 Burning Force and go up to the 4th Andromeda just because Nexus removal was so key. There was Netherworld's Depths everywhere. There was Nomengard City everywhere. Volcanic Canyon, things like that. Being able to pop them is very big, but again, and this is just a much better anti-aggro card than Andromeda is. Then we got 3 Big Bang Energy, and shout out to my teammate Jesse for making me put the 3rd Big Bang in like the night before deck submission because I was playing it at 2 because I was just playing a little bit lower of a Nova package, and I was just trying to focus more on kind of the Terrasaur package and then just have that end game Big Bang Nova type stuff or whenever I needed it. And then I tested versus Super Aggro, and I realized that I need to be able to go for that Big Bang recovery as soon as possible for these decks that are a little bit faster than I am. So went back up to the 3rd Big Bang. It made all the difference because there was just so many times where in the event I was playing against aggro, I would let them get me down to 1 life, go for Big Bang, go for the Nova combo, recover back up to 5, swing, pop with Nova. Now it's very hard for them to develop things because versus aggro decks, once you get Nova on the board, if you can play around Deadly Balance, it's very hard for them to get rid of it. So being able to just have the consistency of Big Banging early gives you a big edge in those super aggro matchups, so it was a big deal. And then we are going to finish off the main deck with the 4 Absolute Ice Shield, of course. And shout out to my teammate Brandon for letting me borrow 3 of the Alt-Art Ice Shields, as well as the 2 Nova Saga Rares, so that way I could have super shiny build, that max rarity. But this card, not too much to say. I feel like it's very standard, especially in a build like this. There's a lot of aggro out in the metagame right now, and there was, so having the Ice Shield out early is very good, especially versus Nova, because you want to stay at low health so that way you can heal up with Nova, and you also need a little bit of time to find that combo pieces, so being able to stall out with the Ice Shield is very nice. Now, the thing that I love the most about Nova is that you can actually play mind games with the Ice Shield, because there was multiple times during the event where I'd have an Ice Shield set, and my opponent would be super sure that it's an Ice Shield set as my burst, but they would swing, and I would go down to 1 health, and I wouldn't activate the Ice Shield, and I would just stay at 1, but that's because I would have the Big Bang Seaworm Nova combo in hand. I would be able to recover 4, and I would be able to keep my Ice Shield, and that actually made a lot of mind games, because one of my opponents thought that it was going to be like Dream Bomb or Counter Sword or something as my set card, because I let that attack go through before the Nova, and then when they started to aggro me out and go back down, then I activated my first Ice Shield. They saw it was the Ice Shield and saw that I let it go through before, and it was kind of a mind game thing, even though it was, I feel like, an objectively correct play. But that's the one thing about Ice Shield, is it just lets you set up your Nova turns really well and just kind of control when you're going to let that happen. But this is the main deck, so let's go ahead and get on into the 10 card side deck. Alright, so for the side deck, I will say that I probably could have made a bit better of a side deck. I think I was preparing for too many things just because of the undefined metagame, but now that we have a little bit more knowledge of what the metagame would look like, I think you can make a bit better of a side deck, so I'll let you know what I liked and what I didn't like. But getting on into it, I'll start off with the 2 Snowflakin'. I wanted to pair these because they're really good versus things like curse decks like the Dragonaga Assassin or Camelot Knight, where essentially you can play this out and you can block and just repeatedly bounce it, meaning that they would have to keep spinning cores to get those things out. But it is a 4-core 6K, so a lot of the times you can go ahead and block something and then bounce something else, and then whatever you blocked will get deleted because you're at a 6K, which is very big. I did side in Snowflaking quite a bit because I played 4 curse aggro decks, so there was a good chance that I was going to be needing this, and so I was happy to put in the Snowflaking because I was just playing 1 originally. Decided to put the second one in. It came in clutch, but one of the things that I wanted to also tech for was the Giganorex Nova stuff, and so since you bounce confronts as well, I did like the Snowflakin' there, but I will say that from testing, Snowflakin' versus the purple curse stuff was very good, very annoying for my opponent, and just felt very effective versus the confront stuff. Didn't that much. You do have the armor red, which is nice, which means you can leave it at level 1 and not get like burning force and stuff like that, but for the most part, it didn't feel as great versus the confront cards. It felt much better versus cursed, but still, Snowflaking came in clutch. Then I'm playing 1 Countersword and 1 Gun Knight Heavy Barrel. These were mostly my anti-Nova cards. I had Snowflakin' in here because essentially I was kind of pairing these together for the anti-red, because if I was playing versus the Giganorex Confront package, I could go for the Snowflakin', but if I was playing versus the just full Nova package, I could go for these two. Now, neither of them were really that great. As somebody who played a ton of Nova and played against Countersword hundreds of times, Countersword is incredibly easy to play around. I would say that it is a fringe anti-Nova card, but as for Gun Knight Heavy Barrel is much better in my opinion. But the thing is they're both kind of inconsistent, and honestly, like I said, I just didn't make the best side deck. I couldn't decide which one of these two I wanted to play, and so I decided that just having something that could be a burst and have something that could be on deletion while pairing it with the Snowflakin' could give me a pretty good matchup versus these Nova decks, whether they're playing pure Nova or they're playing the Giganorex Terrasaur Nova. But for the most part, I didn't side in Heavy Barrel once. I sided in Countersword a bunch of times, even versus things that weren't red, so I'd have to do more testing versus the full Nova, but for the most part, the Heavy Barrel didn't do that great, but the Countersword was much better versus things like purple than it was versus things like Nova. Then we got 2-head Ice Maid Fulla, which again, I also didn't sideboard in this event at all, just because I was playing against, all the purples that I played against were aggro curse, and so I wasn't really playing against the core strip purple. But the thing is I've played against enough core strip purple to where I would still side the Ice Maid Fulla regardless. I just didn't play it in the main event, which is why I didn't side it, but I still think it's worth the slot because that matchup can be pretty annoying. But once you get the Fulla in there and you can play around the Bishop Curse Dragon combo, it's very nice. So definitely like the Fullas. Then we got 2 Dragon Arc, and these are anti-aggro cards. These are cards that I wish I could have had in my main deck, but I wanted to play that Terrasaur Emperor Beast package, so I decided to keep the low-end Star Dragons out. So I sided in side deck to the Dragon Arc. I sided these in almost every single round because I played aggro pretty much every single round. So yeah, these got sided in more than anything else, not even close. And then I also had Volcanic Break. Volcanic Break was also kind of an anti-aggro card. The main reason why I had Volcanic Break in the side, though, was because I felt like I wanted to side something for Luster Yellow. It was one of those decks where I felt very comfortable versus Luster Yellow, and I didn't necessarily felt like I needed to side it. But there were some times playing versus it where my opponent would have like a Shin on board, or they would be able to go Caladrius with a Gleam of Hope, so now I can't get rid of it with Burning Force and stuff like that. So I wanted to at least, to settle my mind, have something teched for yellow, so I went for Volcanic Break. But this worked as much better of an anti-aggro card, and so a lot of times these three were sided together, but I did technically put this in here for yellow and Shin, but yeah, I think a third Dragon Art could have been very similar. And to finish it off, we are playing one Dark Bishop Baculus as our last side deck card, and this is again just for the white matchup. Not too much to explain for the same reasons why I main decked one, but this way, when I'm playing versus white, if I have two in there, I have a much higher chance of finding it earlier, being able to get that combo going, and just being able to develop a board. Or with two of them, I can go ahead and do the combo with the Sacred Thundering Peaks, strip them down, and be able to do that twice in one game. So again, just wanted to have something teched for yellow and white, even though I felt like my main deck was kind of more teched for them. But so these were kind of the fringe techs, and then everything else outside of the heavy barrel, I think I very much enjoyed everything else. I actually very much enjoyed the Volcanic Break. This card is a lot better than I was giving it credit for. I almost feel like this card is good in siding in a lot of other things than just aggro decks or yellow decks. It's really just good. Being able to delete a 6k is a pretty relevant number, but that is going to be the list I used to get top 32 this past weekend. Obviously wish I could have done a little bit better, but man, I had a ton of fun. Competing in this game is a lot of fun, and this game itself is just a lot of fun, so looking forward to future events. But with that being said, I'm going to get on out of here. Tell me what you like and you don't like about the list down below. Always open to suggestions, so that way I can improve this deck later, but I'll catch you next time. Peace out.